Having your own home is awesome, but it's also a lot of work. The good news? Finding help for your projects is easier than ever. Introducing Angie, the app that puts all your home care needs at your fingertips. Need a pro to fix that emergency leak? Maybe find someone to build a deck, or even set your seasonal tasks on autopilot. Angie can handle all that and more. Expert pros, hundreds of home projects, clear pricing, and the easiest way to book and pay in seconds. This is Angie, your home for everything home. Download the app today.
AM 590, ESPN Omaha. You're listening to The Nick Handley Show.
Do you realize you're bringing disaster on our heads? And yours too?
Omaha's Chris Berman, without the...
He could go all the way.
We're rumbling, bumbling, and stumbling into another hour.
All right, hour number 3 here, the Nick Handley Show, and a Handley's Hangout brought to you by Line & Kugels as we are broadcasting live from Addie's 10th and Dodge. A lot of activity in the Major League Baseball trade deadline. And I feel like every year, if there's at least one or two moves, everyone's like, oh, wow, that was crazy. Crazy is what I remember. No, this is, like, for real. There are so many big names that were on the move. This is without question one of the most active trade deadlines involving household names. And we will get you the very latest on that. Coming up in 15 minutes, going to go back to the Nebraska football and basketball conversation. Chris Basnett of the Lincoln Journal-Star will be joining us. And Baz will obviously have some thoughts on Delano Banton, having his name called in the NBA draft last night. Also, Marcus Zegarowski from Creighton I was going to say dealt. No, he wasn't dealt. He wasn't traded. He was drafted. That's what happened. But we'll get into the latest from the NBA draft from last night as well. But what we know now the deadline is an hour in the books for Major League Baseball. Chris Bryant did get dealt to the San Francisco Giants, and that one happening right at the deadline. So if you are a Cubs fan, here's who you lost over the last 24 hours. Anthony Rizzo, who went to the New York Yankees. Yeah. The White Sox getting Chicago's Craig Kimbrell. Which is interesting that the crosstown rivals there working out a deal. Also, Javi Baez going to the New York Mets. And then just recently reported Chris Bryant going to the San Francisco Giants. So that is a lot of big-time Chicago Cubs players. Well, I guess, guys, do we consider Jock Peterson, who went to the Atlanta Braves?
Yeah, he wasn't like a real Cub,
No,
and that was a while ago.
Yeah, that was like way early. So how about that? Chris Bryant, Anthony Rizzo, and Javi Baez, because I don't even put Craig Kimbrell, because the closer in that amazing run by the Cubs was your boy, Aroldis Chapman, who wants no part of Rajai Davis, who still wakes up screaming when he sees Rajai Davis. Choking up and poking one over the left field wall at Progressive Field to tie a game, and if it wasn't for Mother Nature, Cleveland would have won that Game 7. But I'm not bitter.
You can't say that. I don't have the song queued up.
No, sorry. Well, Kimbrell had nothing to do with it. So, again, I don't even consider Kimbrell like a big part of that championship run that the Chicago Cubs had. But I try not to show that much sympathy towards the Chicago Cubs. But my in-laws and my wife from Illinois, diehard Cubs fans, and anybody that's been a diehard Cubs fan longer than 2015, because I know there's a lot of bandwagoners now too, usually have some type of family story. Like I remember seeing when I was in Chicago for Game 5 in 2016. a lot of people, my mother-in-law, they were wearing buttons of a grandfather that was no longer with them, that they were, kind of went it for their grandfather or uncles who were not alive to see what potentially could be a once-in-a-lifetime thing. Like, I can respect that. That's when your fandom and your rooting interest, it goes deeper than just, hey, come on, win this so I can feel good about myself. When you actually say, boy, my memories of watching this team are linked to someone who is no longer with us, and that person never got to see this team win a championship. Like, I get that. And people that were such an important part of that championship no longer being with that team. And likable guys, too. Chris Bryant, Anthony Rizzo, Javi Baez, like arguably the most well-liked Chicago Cubs in a decade. Maybe even more. Hell, maybe a half century, are now gone. And, Brock, I know you brought this up yesterday, between Bryant and Rizzo, and I don't know I'd have to look at Javi Baez's contract off the top of my head. Some of these guys could maybe be dealt back to Chicago, or Chicago could reacquire them in the offseason. I mean, how many times do you really see that, though? I feel like
it happened with Chapman.
That's true. It did happen with Chapman. But the Yankees, they kind of do things a little bit different. Maybe them and the Dodgers. And that's not to say the Cubs don't have good payroll, but if you're getting rid of these guys, chances are you're trying to maximize your value with them. You're trying to do some rebuild, and you don't want to maybe invest a lot of money or even a good chunk of money into people that you've already parted ways with. So I would say it's probably less likely that you ever see them in a Chicago Cubs uniform in the next 5 years. Maybe they come back to, finish their time, on a little 2-year kick or something of that nature. But, again, today I feel for Cubs fans as much as they broke my heart in 2016.
Yeah, their championship team no longer there. You got to feel bad for them.
It's been
half the city.
It's been picked apart.
Whoa, come on. Jason Hayward's still kind of patrolling right field.
Whatever.
Yeah.
Wilson Contreras is still behind the plate.
They do. Hey, they got Grandpa Ross managing the team. If you ask Cubs fans, they tell you he was the MVP, which is laughable. David Ross is fine. But I think it's more like, we love David Ross because he's an old guy and he catches a mean game. And, yes, he did have a home run in Game 7. But, I know this sounds crazy, and this is going to come across as a bitter Cleveland Indian fan. I think David Ross is kind of overrated. Might make a good manager. I don't know. I thought he was kind of overrated. Hot take right there.
It's a little bitter.
Yeah, probably. More of the trades that came through. Now, Brock, first of all, let's just grade your Yankees. Because they got Andrew Heaney was the most recent, right?
Yeah, they made 3 deals over the past couple of days for Gallo, Rizzo, and Andrew Heaney. I haven't seen any other moves trade-wise on their part.
You also get the Philadelphia Phillies making some moves. Phillies got, again, right at the deadline, they were able to finalize a deal against starting pitcher Kyle Gibson and Ian Kennedy from the Texas Rangers. In return, the Rangers will get Spencer Howard. So that's something there. We mentioned the Kimbrel into the White Sox, but the Blue Jays getting Jose Barrios from the Twins, which, as a Cleveland fan, I am not upset at all to see Barrios out of the American League Central. Speaking of the Indians, the Atlanta Braves were able to acquire Eddie Rosario. And speaking of the Twins, when he was with the Twins, he always beat up on Cleveland. And then to see him in a Cleveland uniform, I was kind of excited because I'm like, well, at least he can't beat up Cleveland anymore. Well, he did. He just beat him up by not even lasting an entire season, although that wasn't his fault. Kyle Schwarber is now to the Red Sox. Mentioned Rizzo. You also got the Dodgers and getting Max Scherzer, which was a huge one. The Toronto Blue Jays getting Brad Hand from the Nationals. So the Nationals, much like the Cubs, deciding to absolutely go fire sale.
Yeah,
So
that's going to be including John Lester.
Yep.
Because he's gone to the Cardinals. But, man, you got to look at what the Dodgers just added. Between Scherzer, Trey Turner, and trading for Danny Duffy from the Royals. That's nuts. That's a crazy starting 5 rotation. And their starting lineup, like once everybody's healthy, is an all-star team.
Yeah.
Every person on their lineup, with the exception of Will Smith, their starting catcher, is an all-star or has been.
I want to get to the Scherzer Turner to the Dodgers. Jeff Passan breaking down a lot of these trades. Here is Passan talking about that Scherzer and Turner to the Dodgers deal.
All right, Jeff Passan joins us now here on SportsCenter. He is our insider, and he's tweeting and getting information as we speak. So allow us to interrupt your work for a little bit here, Jeff, to share with America how this whole thing went down. I mean, a huge blockbuster for the Dodgers to get both of these dudes.
Enormous. And earlier in the day, there were reports out there that the San Diego Padres were going to be landing Max Scherzer. When it all was said and done, not only did their rival, the Los Angeles Dodgers, get Scherzer, but they got Trey Turner as well. And this is quite simply the blockbuster of blockbusters in baseball.
Yeah.
You look at Trey Turner and Max Scherzer, these are 2 of the 15 best players in all of baseball. And when you add them to a team that already has Mookie Betts, Cody Bellinger, Walker Buehler, Clayton Kershaw. I can go on and on about the talent that the Dodgers have already. Remember, they're the defending champions from 2020, and when they're going to put out a team that has this much talent on the field, they're the favorites in 2021 now, too.
So, yeah, I mean, the Dodgers, it looked like that, well, of course, the Yankees made a lot of moves, too, but the Dodgers getting a lot better. And, look, I think even with a team that, if you look at where things stand right now with L.A. and thinking that, hey, this is going to be another great opportunity for L.A. to, in a more traditional year, be able to contend and defend that World Series title, just three games out of first in the West between them and the Giants, and knowing that the Padres are also trying to make a play at this thing, it's going to be a lot of fun, but it's hard not to think now with what the Dodgers ended up doing that they're not right back into that seat of, okay, not only do we think that they could be the best team in the West, and I think the Giants getting Chris Bryant, that's also a huge addition, but the Dodgers in that payroll and what they're able to pull off, man, yeah, I think you put them right back into that conversation of true contender, not just in the National League, but in Major League Baseball. A big time 2-day stretch there for the LA Dodgers. All right, when we come back, we are going to get into some more Husker football. Also talk a little bit about last night's NBA draft. Delano Banton, hearing his name in the second round. And what's going on with the Husker basketball roster as we will be getting closer to them starting their practice in the coming weeks. Chris Basnett of the Lincoln Journal-Star joins us right after the break.
ESPN, Husker games, and the Nick Handley Show, all in one place. The new AM 590 app, powered by Woodhouse Chrysler Jeep Dodge Ram. Download now from the App Store or Google Play.
I get a chance to talk to Chris Basnett of the Lincoln Journal-Star, joining us now here on the Limitless Mail Medical Hotline. Baz, we missed you at the Pinnacle Bank Championship Media Day. Before we lost Bruncy in our group, because, you know, that whole Trev Alberts announcement taking place that day, I'm happy to report that we were 2 under after 3 with an eagle putt on a par 5 before our team got broken up. Just letting you know.
Well, I guess you should probably thank Trev, so you wouldn't have to deal with me being there, so that eagle putt wouldn't have even mattered. So I guess we'll just leave it at that.
You were a no-show. Did you already know about this Trev Alberts news that morning? Why the hell didn't you tell us so we would just go ahead and go in the office?
I wasn't aware of the Trev Alberts news at that point. We actually, oddly enough, we had a babysitter fall through early in the morning, so I had to stay home with our son. And I was planning on actually coming down to Elkhorn for the lunch after the round, where I'm sure you would have regaled me with tales of your wonderful outing on the golf course. But it ended up working out where I got the babysitter straightened out, and then a few minutes later, the Trev Alberts news broke. So I just said, well, guess I'll stay in Lincoln today.
Yeah, wow. And doesn't that feel like that was like a month ago? In reality, it was just a few weeks back. But here we are. And Before we get into football and just that side of the conversation, how surprised were you last night learning Delano Banton going in the second round of the NBA draft?
I was surprised. I think a lot of people were, and if you look at the draft projections and all those things, it comes as a surprise. But maybe it wasn't a surprise to Delano. Maybe he knew something the rest of us didn't when he decided to keep his name in the draft and bet on himself, as he said in his social media posts. And clearly Toronto saw something they really liked in him and saw a chance to bring a hometown kid into the fold with a kind of a historic pick, being the first Canadian pick by the Raptors last night. So, yeah, it's surprising. Certainly, I think it's surprising to a lot of people around the league. But at the same time, Delano's a guy with such a unique skill set and a unique chance to be a player that just kind of stands out because of what he can do. That you can kind of understand why the Raptors took a chance on him there at 46.
And this is one of those things, as you point out, this is probably more about potential size at that position than what we actually had a chance to see, because as much as Delano Banton, really kind of got everybody, I think, excited about what he could be at Nebraska. We saw early on, there was a time, and again, everybody was kind of dealing with a lot of different stuff during that COVID year where he just kind of fell off the radar a lot in his production. So, I mean, you just kind of feel like this is more of a potential, like we've seen a lot of these picks around that time in the NBA draft.
Yeah, I think absolutely it is. And who knows what would have happened if Nebraska wouldn't have had the COVID pause last year, if Delano could have kind of built on the strong start he had to the year. Maybe he plays himself into a first-round pick. Who knows? But, yeah, it's about potential with Delano, and it's nothing we haven't talked about before with just the size of his position, like you said, the feel for the game, the passing ability, and you ask those that know the game at the professional level, and they'll say if he can find a way to shoot it, he's going to be an effective NBA player. So if he's able to get this jump shot straightened out on a consistent basis, he's maybe not all that far away from making an impact on an NBA roster, because right now he kind of has everything that you're looking for at that level and at that position, just with his unique size and his unique intangibles.
Baz, I know there's been a lot of basketball media availability over the last month now, and hearing from Fred Hoiberg and some of the players, it seems like, I mean, as usual, there's optimism, there's excitement, but is it crazy to think that, there might just be something with some of that typical excitement and optimism that you pretty much hear from every team around this point of the year? Yeah,
I think players recognize players, right? Like talent recognizes talent. And clearly I think the talent on this roster is going to be the best that Fred Hoiberg has had in his time at Lincoln. The depth is certainly going to be the best that Fred Hoiberg has had in his time in Lincoln. And guys see that. They practice against each other every day. They go through the drills every day, and the 5-on-5 and the 3-on-3 and whatever else may be. They see each other up close. Behind the closed doors when people are fighting for positions and kind of trying to establish themselves early on and things like that. So, yeah, you're right. Every team's going to say that at this point in the year, that optimism's high and everything like that. But, yeah, it maybe feels a little different with this team because I think the depth is there and the athleticism is there in ways that it hasn't been yet under Fred Hoiberg. So, obviously, we'll see how it plays out. This is still a team that's won 7 games each of the last 2 years. So, in my mind, they need to go prove it. But at the same time, look at the roster and Bryce McGowan, Wilhelm Breidenbach, C.J. Wilcher, Trey McGowan, just all the guys. They go, okay, yeah, that guy looks like a player. They've got a lot of those guys. So we'll see what it looks like. But, yeah, I think there's a good reason for the optimism we've heard out of those guys over the past couple weeks.
Baz, if we're looking at a realistic win total or conference standing for Nebraska and trying to measure success, I mean, is it something as simply as just stack the wins wherever you get them from non-conference to conference play, or for people to feel, genuinely excited about where this thing is going? Do you need to see that climb in the standings? Do you need to see significant movement from Nebraska in the Big Ten standings?
Yeah, I think it's funny, if it's a deal where if you're the 8th, 9th, 10th place team in the Big Ten, then you're probably on the NCAA tournament bubble, right? From what we've seen the last few years. So it's not like Nebraska is would have to make a massive jump. Now, obviously, they finished at the bottom of the league the last couple of years, but they've had games where they've been competitive against the top teams in the conference, and they've been close in a lot of games, and they had a lot of positive momentum last year to end the season in conference games. So, it's not like Nebraska has to make a massive jump, and I think this is a team that's capable of doing it. The Big Ten is still going to be tough. It maybe won't be the bear it was last year just because we've seen so many of the league's great players move on to the professional ranks and whatnot, and we've seen a couple new coaches come into the league and those types of things. But, yeah, Nebraska's, I don't think, is far off. Now, again, like I said, we need to see it. We need to see the tangible progress, the incremental process to keep that optimism going, no doubt. But there's an opportunity, I think, to build momentum with that non-conference schedule. I think, if you look at it, you can see 8-9 wins there, I think, fairly easily without having to work too hard. And you know what? That builds confidence because now you go, well, we're maybe halfway to an NCAA tournament berth if we win 9 games. So, yeah, the opportunity is there. Nebraska needs to start strong in the non-conference. Conference play is its own animal, and that sort of stuff will shake itself out as the year goes on. But, yeah, it's not like Nebraska, I think, has to make this huge, massive jump to all of a sudden be a contender for an NCAA tournament berth. If they can get out of that bottom 4, they're going to be in the conversation for postseason consideration.
Talking to Chris Basden of the Lincoln Journal-Star here on AM 590. Well, Baz, the fall camp officially underway as of this morning, and knowing that Nebraska and how important this season is, you just feel like trying to maximize every day is going to be so important from this team. Just all in all, as things sort of get underway and as you've kind of heard, between Big Ten Media Days, and I know you were out there in Indianapolis last week, and given what you heard yesterday between the players and coaches, just kind of what's your overall feel as things kick off today?
Yeah, it's interesting. I've had a couple people ask me that, and I don't necessarily think the confidence that you hear from players and coaches has changed. I think it's more the way in which the message is delivered has been changed. I think it's a little more measured, and that starts with Scott Frost at the top, and I think we heard that at Big Ten Media Days last week, and now we're starting to hear it from players this week, yesterday in particular. So the confidence is there for this team, but I think there's a little bit larger dose of realism, realizing that steps have to be made, realizing they're not going to be able to show up and just roll the balls out and win a game in the Big Ten, whatever it may be. It was a hard year for a lot of people last year. It was a hard year for the Nebraska football team last year, and it's been a hard couple of years under Scott Frost. So maybe there's a dose of humility there that's kind of permeated this team and kind of set things in a little bit more of a realistic light, so to speak, for this roster. So I like the tone of what we heard yesterday. I like the tone Scott Frost took at Big Ten Media Days. Now it's like basketball. You have to go and do it on the field and show that it's not just empty talk. But I like the direction that this has started off with as we get going here.
If you could give me a name or two at the running back position that you think very well could emerge as the guy Nebraska can lean on, are you looking at some early favorites in that position battle? I'm really not, and I promise that's not a cop-out. I don't think anybody knows right now, and I think that's something that Scott Frost touched on yesterday, where he was kind of asked a similar question, and he didn't really give a specific name. Is it Marquise Stepp? Is he going to be healthy enough? Is it one of the young guys that hasn't gotten a lot of experience? I just think that position is so wide open at this point, and so often you hear coaches talk about, well, you need more than one running back. You got to have a bunch of guys to get through the season, get through a game and whatnot. But at some point, if you're Nebraska, you do have to pick one guy, and that's, I think, maybe the challenge right now is you have to find that guy that you can put out there to start a game, and he's going to be a consistent performer for you. So, yeah, it's hard to pick a name or two names right now, just because I don't think anybody knows what it looks like right now, and I think that's a realistic way of looking at it. That's maybe the one position where you go, you know what? I have no idea what's going to happen. Yeah. There's some question marks, different positions, obviously, but that's maybe the one more than any other where I don't think that there's if anybody tells you they know what's going to happen, they're lying to you. Or they're trying to tell you that they have some type of inside knowledge. They're trying to puff out their chest, Baz. Come on. Everybody's an insider these days.
Everybody's an insider. Everybody wants to act like an insider. That's for sure, yeah.
Last question, and I know you mentioned Marquise Stepp. If I were to ask you which one of the newcomers or transfers that you know is at least in position to have a key role this year that you feel the most confident can give Nebraska some production, is there a name or two that you're really looking at there?
Yeah, if you're talking any position, I think it's Samori Toure at receiver. And, that's not exactly going out on a limb because the dude was just a stud at the FCS level. There's no doubt about that. Now, can that translate to the Big Ten, and can that translate to A.J. Martinez being able to get him the ball and him being able to make plays? We saw flashes of it in the spring game, certainly. But that's a guy, I think that's the number one guy I point to. And, I think Marquise Stepp, if he is healthy, I think that's a guy that's going to get a lot of touches because he's maybe the one guy in that room that has some real experience at the Division I level. So if he's able to get healthy, stay healthy, that's a physical downhill type runner that Nebraska's maybe lacked a little bit the last couple of years. So if he's healthy, I really like Marquise Stepp, and I really like Samori Toure if he's able to work out of the slot like we think he might be able to do.
Chris Bazin, Lincoln Journal-Star. Baz, appreciate it. Coming on, man. Have a great weekend.
Thanks, Nick. Appreciate the time.
All right, when we come back, we will recap the rest of the NBA draft. Not just Delano Banton as far as local name, but Marcus Zegarowski with Creighton. And did things go to script as far as our own Brock Workman saw him? We'll get to that next. Also hear what Woj had to say about last night's draft. That's all coming up next.
We're going to dance. We're going to dance.
So last night, the NBA draft, hearing two local names in the draft. That was Delano Banton, as Chris Basner was talking about. Very cool to see. And also, I think one that was a little bit more anticipated, and that was knowing Marcus Zegarowski would be headed to the NBA. And Zegarowski, a guy that basically went right after Delano Banton. He was drafted 49th by the Brooklyn Nets. And he is now the second Creighton player ever drafted by the Nets franchise, joining Kyle Korver. If you remember Korver, who was originally with the Nets all the way back in 2003, and Korver actually went 51st. But
he was traded to the Sixers on draft night, wasn't he?
Yes, that's true. Yeah, originally, started with it was the Nets, and then you had to trade. And of course, remember Doug? He was drafted by Denver, and then the trade to Chicago. So all kinds of wheelings and dealings. Delano Banton, I'm with Baz, though. I was stunned by that.
Yeah.
Like,
of all the
going 46 to the Raptors, too. Like, that was just stunning.
Yeah, because I follow a lot of mock draft people, whether it was Sports Illustrated or ESPN or The Ringer or all these different things. I never saw Delano Banton's name mentioned once. I don't even think I saw Zegarowski's name mentioned as possibly getting drafted in the second round. So when both of those came up, like you said, kind of right on top of each other, it was like, wow, that was a surprise.
Yeah, and the Delano Banton one, and this is the one thing, and Brock, I'm sure you'd agree with this following the NBA draft like you do. And a lot of drafts, in a way, are based upon more of potential than what you have currently seen from these guys at either the collegiate level or at a very high level. It's more of, okay, what the potential is. And especially in basketball, when you look at the frame and the body of some of these guys, that's where, even if you've had sort of an average or even an underwhelming season that you're coming off of, I mean, you look at the size of Delano Banton, 6'9" guard. That's the size that you see play in the NBA. And so I have to assume that, based on just the athleticism that goes that 6'9" frame and being able to play the backcourt the way that they do feel and know Delano Banton can, that obviously had to be a big part of that. Wouldn't you agree? Oh,
absolutely. I mean, the sixth pick in the draft to the Thunder was Josh Giddey, the Australian teenager who is the exact same size as Banton. Is that 6'8", 6'9", 190 pounds soaking wet kind of thing, but just great handle, great vision on the court, can shoot enough, can make enough plays to warrant him kind of controlling the ball on on the second unit. And I think Banton's going to have a good time playing in Toronto.
Now, even though he wasn't drafted, Creighton's Damian Jefferson will be playing in the Summer League with the Sacramento Kings. So he'll be playing in a pair of upcoming NBA Summer Leagues next month. He could make his professional debut on August 3rd and 4th as part of the 3rd Annual California Classic. It's a 2-day summer basketball showcase featuring teams from the Kings, Warriors, Lakers, and Heat organizations. So that's where Damian Jefferson found himself, too. And a lot of these guys, say, looking to play either Euroball or hoping to catch on to somebody in a summer league and possibly have a chance to sort of make their mark there. But two names that we know that did get drafted last night, Delano Banford, Nebraska, and Marcus Zegarowski. If you would have asked between those two guys yesterday who would be most likely drafted, I still would have said Zegarowski, not Delano Banford. So
I don't know. That's a tough one because Banton's got the size and he's got a little bit of youth on Zegarowski. Zegarowski's been around a while, and older players tend to get overlooked a lot. Those are the guys that need the summer league to prove that they can, come in and contribute right away.
Yeah, I thought that was the Zegarowski. The reason I say Zegarowski is because if you go back to the end of the college basketball season and sort of where he ranked amongst the active point guards in college basketball, he was still considered to be one of the better ones in college basketball. I would agree, though, and maybe it's just because this season, the NBA season, took as long as it did and you didn't have the normal time of the draft, that maybe his name lost a little bit of steam. But if I do remember correctly, like while college basketball was going on and you had some of those mock drafts there towards the end of the college basketball season, Zegarowski's name was one that was considered to be an interesting one that they thought could very well show up on draft day. So, yeah, I just think that now how will Zegarowski do at the professional level, we'll see. But kid definitely had a great college run there, and I think just, Brock, to what you said, maybe his experience overall is something that just with that particular organization and the Brooklyn Nets, just kind of looking at him and trying to stockpile that system, and we'll see if he remains with them. But, all in all, I thought it was somewhat surprising that we did have the names that we did yesterday.
Yeah, well, the Nets are definitely going to need bodies because much like the Lakers, they have their big three, and then their bench has kind of taken a hit this offseason with a lot of free agents that they're not going to be able to re-sign everybody. So the fact that they got Cameron Thomas and Deron Sharp at the end of the first round, which is two guys I really wanted the Knicks to get, side note, and then taking Zegarowski there in the second round, those are three guys that could very easily see some minutes, especially during the regular season, on a kind of depleted Nets roster.
Yeah, and I just want to make sure everyone knows Banton did get drafted before Garza. He did. And
they both got drafted before Garza.
I know.
Yeah, and
Drake
threw Delano Banton on his Instagram story last night, which is pretty cool.
Oh, hell, now it's, yeah.
But he did cross out the Adidas logo.
Okay. Well, yeah. Drake can't be wrong with that, right?
No.
Well, there was also a huge move on top of the draft with the addition of Russell Westbrook to the Lakers. We'll get Woj's thoughts on that when we return here to Addie's Tent to Dodge.
This is Omaha's home for Husker sports. Your connection to the Big Red, AM 590, ESPN Omaha.
So the big move last night, Russell Westbrook joining the LA Lakers. And a move that is going to be very interesting as the Washington Wizards, I think, actually got one of the better things out of this in Kyle Kuzma. But how will this whole thing work? Well, Adrian Wojnarowski talking about the blockbuster deal last night during the NBA draft.
Last night, the Wizards agreeing to send Russell Westbrook to the Lakers. This according to our Adrian Wojnarowski, who is conveniently located to my left. The 32-year-old Westbrook coming off his fourth season, averaging a triple-double. To get him, the Lakers had to give up a lot in addition to their first-round draft pick this year. L.A. giving up three big role players. You see it there, including Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, their promising young player Kyle Kuzma, and Montrezl Harrell are headed the other way to Washington. And so, again, as we showed you, Woj is here. We'll have Stephen A. this morning, and we'll have Big Perk this morning as well for all of the insight. But what can you tell us about this deal and how it came together?
Well, Russell Westbrook had been talking with Bradley Beal in Washington about what his future would be. And now Bradley Beal has ultimately decided that he's going to continue to play in Washington, not ask for a trade, and Washington's going to try to sign him to an extension, certainly. But as those conversations started going, I think the chance to be in LA and LA's interest in Westbrook, Washington started to have some conversations with LA, and then they started to pick up here in the last couple of days the possibility for Westbrook to go home. Grew up in LA, played at UCLA, and to now team up with LeBron James and Anthony Davis and leave a team that's certainly rebuilding in Washington to have a chance to finally win a championship in LA. And they finally got that deal done last night.
So it's an enormous deal, obviously, and the names at the top of that roster are huge. But where are the names beneath it? What should we expect them to do from here? Because essentially, outside of those three guys, I can't even think of who else they have under contract.
Well, they really got 5 players under contract, and Marc Gasol is the fourth after their big three. So they've got to start spending their time now. Talen Horton-Tucker, he's their own restricted free agent. They can sign him. This is a team that's going to have to go out and really be looking. They've got a mid-level exception of around $6 million, but then minimum contracts. And you're going to have to hope that veteran players who might take a little bit less or who the market, it doesn't quite work out the way they think it is. Let me go do a 1 or 2 year deal with LA, get my market value up, have a chance to win a championship. They're going to need shooting on this roster. When you bring Russell Westbrook in, typically you're going to complement LeBron and Anthony Davis because of the attention, they draw on defense to have shooting around them. Russell Westbrook's game is still attacking the basket. Listen, he was a player last year who could have easily been all NBA with the kind of season he had, especially how they finished. This is going to be a really intriguing big three to watch. And I think Westbrook is going to bring just certainly a lot of electricity back home to L.A.
They should have went with Buddy Hield. That's all I got to say. This has got disaster written all over it, but I'm looking forward. I'm looking forward to seeing what happens. Yeah. All right, we'll get back into some Nebraska football conversation. Tight ends, running backs, and wideouts. So much. All next.